Hello my friends, I'm going to share with you today one of my favorite recipes that was handed down to me from my grandmother, and it's stuffed cabbage, and she called halupki, and there's some other names. We call them pigs in a blanket, and I've heard it lovingly referred to as Polish hand grenades. So whatever you want to call them, the stuffed cabbage, this is possibly the best recipe or best stuffed cabbage you're ever going to eat. So if you follow along with me, I'll show you what we're doing. And first thing that we do is we have to wilt our cabbage. So the outer leaves we're going to discard, and I have on the stove water already heating up, and we're going to wilt this head of cabbage. And to wilt it, we have to remove the core. First thing I'm going to do is cut the stem end off, and I'm using my chef knife to do that. Okay, now you can see that core, and the chef knife is a little too dangerous to do this, so I'm using a paring knife. And what I'm going to do is just start stabbing into this. And this is the roughest part of making this stuffed cabbage, is working with this cabbage head and getting it wilted. Removing the core is probably the easiest way to be able to remove the individual leaves and to get the center of it heating up to where it'll be wilting. So I got most of the core out, and that'll leave a pocket. This is such a large head, it's bigger than what is needed for all the stuffed cabbage, so there's going to be a small section in the center that'll be left over. There's not enough water to cover the whole head of cabbage, and what I'll do is I'll cover it with a lid so it'll be steaming it, and I will rotate it every once in a while and watch as this starts to wilt. The outer leaves, since they're already removed from the core, may be coming off, and I'll be removing those because I don't want to overcook the cabbage leaves. I just want it cooked enough that it will allow me to roll the filling inside the cabbage leaf. You want to start with mixing up your sauce first, and the sauce is going to consist of a can of tomato soup condensed, and then a can of water with the condensed soup, a can of tomato sauce. So we have a can of tomato soup, can of tomato sauce with 1 can of water. And then what's going into that is a tablespoon of brown sugar. The filling, you want to start with ground meat, and you need 1.5 pounds of ground meat. Here I'm using a mix of beef, pork, and veal. And you can use any one of them, but the combination of that seems to be the best flavor. Okay, then you're going to add 2 tablespoons of ketchup, a teaspoon of black pepper. It is a black powder. You want to add rice. We're going to use a cup of barley and 1/2 cup of rice. Okay, traditionally in the old country, barley was more common than rice. Rice originated from Asia, and the barley was around the Mediterranean area. So this rice and barley is not fully cooked. What I do is I heat it up with water on the stove, get it to where it starts to boil. I put it on a slow boil for about 2-3 minutes, then I turn it off and leave it set. And then it will absorb the water, but it'll not be fully cooked. It'll finish its cooking while it's in the crock pot or baking dish that you're cooking it in. You want a 1/4 cup of parsley. This is freshly chopped. You want 1 onion, and I finely chopped this. I try to get the sections of the onion, it's a little bit larger than the size of the barley or the rice. So that goes in there. Next, you want to add 1 package of onion soup mix. This is something that my mother added to my grandmother's recipe. So this is a base that my mother uses a lot of times when she makes different soups. So that adds some salt, that adds some of the other spices that's in there. So that's why I wasn't adding any salt into the recipe. That'll be in there. And then you want 2 eggs. And of course I'm using the organic. The egg, what that does is when it cooks, it bonds all the ingredients together, makes it into a tighter filling in there. Now we mix this all together. Now, one reason why we mixed up the sauce first is we want to add a little bit of this sauce into our filling mix so that it'll be moist. And I can't really tell you how much you add. You just got to put some in, mix it up, and so that the final mix looks moist. This is helping it mix a little bit better. I would be guessing that I'm putting in about a 1/4 cup to possibly as much as a 1/2 cup. You get it too wet, you're going to have trouble forming this. Just mix it until it's very thorough. As the cabbage wilts, you want to take some out and let them cool so you can handle them. And then this ridge that's on the back, use your paring knife and trim the ridge off. And then all these trimmings put into your container that you're cooking the stuffed cabbage in, and that'll cook right along with it. Then, depending on what size you want to make these, scoop a mass in there. This will be determined by the size of the leaves that you have. And then roll these up. And then at the ends, this is a very large leaf, then you want to tuck them in. Tuck the ends in. Just like that. Remove the ridge. This will be a very sweet part, and that goes into the pot. That'll be a very sweet part of the food here. This cabbage, it's in the fall, it's locally grown. I got it off the Amish, and it's very sweet. So the cabbage makes a big difference on how this will taste. Okay, this is a fair size. Tuck this in, starting with that ridge. Roll it, and then these ends, tuck them in. Like that. Okay, see what we got going here. All right, and then that is then placed into our pot like this, and we continue making rolls and fill the pot up like that. And what you can do as you're making these, any of the trimmings or any of the cabbage that you tear that won't make a roll, you just put it in layers with these blankets, pigs in the blanket. I think the old traditional recipes, beef was not as widely used as pork. So I believe that's why the name pigs in a blanket came about, because it was using pork more so than the beef. Also the same with the barley. Barley was used. To me, the barley tastes a lot better than making them with rice. But we're using a mix of both barley and rice. This recipe was traditionally or always served when there was a wedding. And when I grew up, that's most of the time we would see these at somebody's wedding. It will make about 16 servings, this particular recipe. And when they were cooking for the wedding, they were doing probably quite a bit larger batches, because what they were using was those large stand-up square type ceramic heaters that are on their own stand. And typically that type of a cooker was only used for making these stuffed cabbage. I'd never seen them used any other time. This ridge has to come off or you can't make the roll. You won't allow that end there to roll. Now, when I found a home-cooked restaurant in Florida that really served some good foods, and once in a while they would have stuffed cabbage, and the stuffed cabbage rolls that they would serve, you would get one stuffed cabbage, but the roll itself was about the size of a meatloaf. So it was a really big meal, but this is considered a very large stuffed cabbage. And like I said, it would depend on the size of cabbage that you're using. I know my mother would, if the leaves were really big, she'd cut them in half and make 2 rolls from one leaf. And I have made these and given them to my mother to eat, and she said they were very good. So it must have met her approval. You can see here how they're getting smaller, and that's because as the leaves are coming off, the leaves are getting smaller too. Okay, this is enough for 16 servings. After you have that filled into your container, you're going to pour your sauce over top. The cook time is going to be 2 hours. But I'm cooking in my slow cooker, so I'm going to leave it on for a good while. And what you want to do with some of the excess cabbage is put it on top. And I'll put some more on, and then it'll go into the cooker. And we turned it on, and covering it up, and let it go for a few hours. Here you have 4 hours in my slow cooker. It could have been done in 2 hours in the oven. So I'm going to turn it off now and let it cool and test what we just made. Here, we're all done. It's already cooled off. And let's see how we did. You won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching, my friends. Bye-bye.